We got Mr. Nightmare Man. And also, bro, if you don't have no channel of your own, don't come commenting your opinion on my channel because you will get cussed out over here. This ain't your average YouTuber that annoy you or you feel me. Be nice to you. You feel me? I ain't that for real. No, I ain't even got that many. I ain't even got over 10K. So that being said, to go ahead and get into. We got some Carnival horror stuff, man. I went at the Carnival one time though. One time, it was straight. You feel me? I ain't never, I had no horror stories. For real, for real.
Starting a new job is always a mix of excitement and nerves. When I landed a summer job at a local carnival in downtown LA, I was just looking for some extra cash before my senior year of college started in the fall. The carnival was a typical setup with rides, games, and food stands, but its main attraction was the funhouse, which doubled as a haunted house after dark. It was actually a solid structure that I think used to be some old guy's mansion or something. I was assigned to manage the funhouse, which was a favorite among the carnival goers. It seemed simple enough. Guide the guests in, ensure they have a fun, safe time, and observe them leave. At first, everything seemed straightforward. But then I started noticing odd things. It started with small discrepancies. I counted a dozen people entering, but only 11 would emerge. At first, I chalked it up to miscounting. After all, keeping track of the chaos of laughter and screams was no easy task. However, as the days passed, the numbers just didn't add up. 7 went in, 6 came out. 10 went in, 9 came out. It's like going crazy.
Why you ain't investigating?
Something was off, and I couldn't ignore it much longer. One particularly busy afternoon, a blonde girl caught my eye as she walked up to the funhouse.
Blonde?
She was drop-dead gorgeous, and almost seemed out of place amidst the childlike atmosphere. She couldn't have been more than a few years older than me. I genuinely had to do a double take. I'm not a weird guy by any means, but I couldn't help but lock eyes with her for a few seconds.
I'll see you on that, bro.
She smiled, handed me her ticket, and I directed her into the attraction. After she disappeared into the darkness, I went back to my duties. Time ticked by, and I watched attentively as people entered and exited, sometimes asking me questions and whatnot. Admittedly, I was paying a little more attention to the guests that night, as I wanted to see that girl as she left and maybe work up the courage to talk to her. Pretty soon, I started picking up on the fact that groups of people who had entered after her were beginning to emerge. A few more minutes passed, and I started getting worried. She should have been out by now. Compelled by a genuine concern, I decided to abandon my post for a few minutes and go looking for her. I stepped inside and locked the entrance door. I began investigating, navigating the dimly lit rooms and narrow corridors. I moved through the house until I came across something I hadn't noticed during my initial walkthroughs, a barely noticeable seam in the wall. I'm not really sure what I was expecting, but curiosity got the best of me. I pressed against the seam, and I heard a distinct
Curiosity killed a dog.
click. I played around with it some more, and my jaw nearly hit the floor when I realized it was a hidden door. It swung open slowly, revealing a pitch-black hallway. I stood there in shock. What in the world was this doing here? I was definitely going to have a long conversation with my boss about this. I walked into the hallway with my phone's flashlight guiding the way. I didn't have much brain power to spend being nervous because I was still so shocked about the whole situation. I got to the end of the passage and found another door. I flung it open, and to my surprise, it was a concealed exit that led back to the carnival grounds. I breathed a sigh of relief as this discovery proved I wasn't going crazy. All those people I hadn't noticed had probably stumbled across that secret door by accident and assumed it was the correct way to go. As I walked back the way I had came, I couldn't help but feel a little bummed out that I wasn't going to get the chance to talk to that girl. I'm not sure what came over me, but I decided to keep exploring the funhouse instead of returning to my post. I think a part of me just wanted a few extra minutes of this impromptu break I was taking. I walked through a couple more rooms, and that's when I noticed it. On one of the walls was another faint seam, identical to the first one I had seen. I again played with it until it clicked and swung open. I could immediately tell this one was very different. The putrid smell was the first thing I noticed. More concerning, though, was the fact that there was no corridor in this one, but a ladder that led downwards.
Oh, hell no.
I was more confused than anything. This door was on the ground floor, and I was told specifically that this place didn't have a basement. I debated climbing down, but I just felt awful about the prospect that the girl might be down there. So, against my instincts, I began the descent. The smell only got worse as I climbed down into the darkness. I was expecting to find a basement, but what I found instead was far, far worse.
Right, that building too
I got to the bottom and pulled out my phone's flashlight.
Damn.
I was frozen in shock. I was literally standing in a tunnel that extended into the darkness.
Excuse me, bitch?
There was literally no way that this was part of the house above. The rational part of my brain screamed, turn back.
Nigga,
forget about it. But the mystery was too compelling.
Cuz, what the fuck a tunnel doing under a fair?
I ventured further, being careful not to make any noise. The walls were damp, and the tunnel was completely silent. As I explored, my flashlight beam fell on something unexpected. A white, glittery purse was sitting in the middle of the corridor. I picked it up, turning it over in my hands. It looked familiar, and then it hit me. It was that girl's purse. I was sure of it. I started to panic. Was she really down here? I doubted there was any way a rational person could find this tunnel and not turn around, but the proof was literally in my hands. My mind started racing. Was she hurt? Lost? And then a more terrifying thought hit me.
Take that way down.
I didn't feel safe anymore, but I was in too deep. Violating every survival instinct I had, I yelled out into the tunnel for that girl. I waited. Nothing. I was just about to shout again when I heard the sound of rapid footsteps echoing through the tunnels. My first instinct was to run. I had every reason to believe whoever was running toward me was hostile. I turned around and bolted back to the ladder. I got halfway up and slipped, falling back to the bottom. The footsteps...
GG's, bro.
Basically right on top of me now. I knew I was done for. I braced myself for a fight, and then a voice rang out. A girl's voice. Her voice. She gasped, "Help me," clutching her side as if in pain. I yelled at her to climb up, but she insisted that I follow her back into the darkness for some reason.
Bitch, what?
I told her there was no chance I was doing that, and basically forced her up the ladder.
Bitch, what?
We got to the top, and I slammed the door shut. I asked her how in the world she ended up down there, and she couldn't really give me a straight answer. She kept saying she didn't really remember how it happened, just that she suddenly realized she was underground. She said she started hearing things moving in the dark, and that there were voices calling to her. I didn't know how to process this. I asked her if someone had guided her down there, and she said she didn't remember. The weirdest thing about her story was that she was looking at me with this blank stare that genuinely freaked me out. I basically interrogated her about why she told me to stay down there, but she didn't answer.
What my boy Gator say? Cahoots. Cahoots.
I had had enough. I wanted to get as far away from this person as possible. I called the police, but she opted to leave the funhouse before they got there. I never saw her again. The police investigated, and what they found was actually insane. Apparently, this house had been some sort of safe house during Prohibition in the 1920s.
Oh.
As such, it had a bunch of secret passageways that led to a section of the underground Prohibition tunnels that hadn't been discovered. The owner claimed he had no idea about the house's history, but I was skeptical. I quit my job and got as far away from there as possible.
Yeah, I would have quit too.
I still have so many questions. Did the owner know about this? Was that girl almost kidnapped? Had someone knocked her out and took her down there or something? Was she part of the whole thing? I feel like there's a number of explanations for what happened to me, but all of them are equally terrifying.
Don't trust a pretty female. Note to the guys. A female that knows she fine is the most dangerous motherfucker on this planet. A female that knows she fine and that is actually fine is the dangerous motherfucker on this planet. So I'm a young bucks out there, man.
Ever since I was a kid.
And that means she can set you up because she pretty. She
I know lots of people find them weird and childish, but not me. Growing up in a small town in Indiana, it's not like there was a whole bunch to do. So whenever the carnivals would roll through town, you best believe I was spending as much time there as I possibly could. It's been over 20 years, and I still enjoy the atmosphere of a local carnival.
Me too,
despite what I'm about to tell you.
I love carnivals.
I think my love for carnivals is something I'll never lose. I was like 10 or 11 when this happened, and I was a kind of nerdy kid growing up. In the days leading up to the spring carnival, I found myself in the library reading up on whatever I found interesting at the time. For whatever reason, I wound up in the history section. I remember the books being literally caked in layers of dust. That's how long it had been since they were even touched. I was flipping through a book on the history of our town when a small, faded slip of paper fell out from between the pages. Confused, I leaned down to pick it up. To my pleasant surprise, it was a ticket for our local spring carnival, dated over 15 years ago. The odds of something like that happening had to be extremely low. I was ecstatic. This ticket would make a great addition to my miscellaneous collection back home. What was even cooler, though, was the fact that the date on the ticket was just 2 days away, when the carnival would certainly be in town.
Oh, no, that's crazy.
As I predicted, the carnival cruised into town the next morning, so I figured why not use the old ticket, just for laughs to see what the booth attendant would say. I wanted to get it punched anyway. The next evening, I headed to the carnival with the ticket safely tucked away in my pocket. As I approached the entrance, the carnival seemed just as lively as ever, the air filled with the scent of cotton candy and popcorn. I pulled out the ticket at the gate, handing it over to the guy.
Nachos with the motherfucker.
His face changed the moment he saw it. He went pale, his eyes widening slightly before he masked his reaction with a forced smile. It was honestly a little creepy. Enjoy your evening, he stammered, handing me back the ticket without punching it. I was so weirded out by his reaction that I forgot to ask him to punch it. I shrugged it off, though, thinking maybe he was just new and confused about the old design of the ticket.
You could tell somebody.
I wandered around, played some games.
You could tell somebody energy off. I ain't going to lie to y'all. Like, even when I was little, I could tell somebody energy was off.
And enjoyed a funnel cake. The night was perfect, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I felt eyes on me, observing. Maybe it was just paranoia. I tried to ignore it at first, but I kept noticing the carnival employees giving me weird looks. After a while, I got fed and decided to ask one of the older game operators about it. I found a kind-looking elderly man running a coin toss booth. I showed him the ticket, and unlike the booth guy, he didn't even try to hide his shock. He glanced around nervously before leaning closer. "Young man, where did you get this?" he asked. After telling him where I found it, I started feeling uneasy about the whole situation. Maybe I should have just kept the ticket at home. "You found something you weren't meant to find," the old man started, his voice dropping to a whisper. "This ticket, it's part of a story that the folks around here don't talk about much. About 15 years ago, something terrible happened during the carnival, right here in this town." He paused as if weighing whether to continue. "There was a young worker, name of Ryan, nice kid. Everybody liked him. He was responsible for one of the rides, I can't remember which. One night he just disappeared, vanished without a trace. The police found his wallet, but there was nothing in it except a ticket that looked an awful lot like this one," he said, gesturing towards my hands. The atmosphere around us seemed to drop a few degrees. He continued. "They searched everywhere, even drained the local pond, but no sign of him. After that, strange things started happening every time the carnival stopped here. Accidents, things going missing, odd sightings. People said it was Ryan trying to come back, or something worse that took him. I could feel a chill running down my spine, but a part of me was skeptical. And you believe that?" I asked. The old man shrugged. "I've seen enough to keep an open mind, but the point is, the ticket you found might stir things up. It's best you get rid of it, leave it here." He then motioned for me to give it to him, but I was reluctant. I looked down at it, reading it over again as if there was some kind of secret I was missing. How could a ticket be the cause of all that? I questioned, still not fully buying it. The look in his eye got darker. His tone switched, almost as if he were angry. He told me to give it here, almost in a growl. I considered it, but concluded that some stupid story wasn't worth giving up such a cool souvenir. I told him no. He actually...
That's why you don't talk to strangers.
Sprung up with a quickness that startled me.
No cap.
He reached for the ticket, his fingers grazing my hand. I jerked back instinctively, clutching the ticket tighter. The old man's expression morphed into something desperate, almost predatory. "You don't understand," he hissed, his eyes darting around as if expecting something or someone to emerge from the shadows. I backed away towards the tense exit, my heart pounding. "I think I should go," I stammered, turning to lose myself in the crowd.
Definitely.
Behind me, I could hear his calls, a mix of pleading and warning. I didn't care what he was saying, though. I let the bustling crowd around me drown his voice out. My mind was racing, not even about the ticket, but more so his aggressive reaction. The joy of the carnival had been spoiled. I left earlier than planned, the ticket burning a hole in my pocket. Over the next few days, my luck seemed to turn sharply. I missed catching the school bus, scraped my knee pretty bad in a bike accident.
I did that.
And worst of all, my best friend accused me of stealing his favorite baseball card, something I would never do. Things got worse than that, though. I remember coming home one night to my mother in tears after losing her job. My brother broke his leg skateboarding the next week.
Damn.
And our beloved family pet, Bean, also passed away a few days after.
Yeah, that shit, that ticket hunting, my brother. You need to get rid of that motherfucker. Cause the dude did say shit was happening at the fair ever since then. So he would have told me that, I would have really just gave him the ticket.
It was like a dark cloud had settled over me since that night at the carnival. I couldn't help but remember the old man's warning about the ticket stirring things up. It seemed ridiculous, but then again, so was the string of bad luck that followed me. My dad laughed when I told him about my theory. He told me that there was no such thing as ghosts, and that I shouldn't be so superstitious. One rainy afternoon after school, after a particularly tough day where I had forgotten my lunch and had to go hungry, I pulled the ticket out. I stared at it, this small piece of paper that had brought nothing but trouble. Feeling a mix of anger and fear, I decided I had had enough. I grabbed my raincoat and boots and trudged out to the creek that ran behind our house. My heart felt like it was pounding out of my chest as the rain soaked through my hair. Standing at the creek's edge, I took one last look at the ticket before tearing it into tiny pieces and watching them get swept up by the current. It's just a piece of paper, I thought. Things started to look up after that. My friend found his baseball card and apologized to me, and we became friends again. I didn't miss the bus a single time that school year. My mom got a better job in the next couple of days. Whether it was all coincidence or that ticket really was cursed, I couldn't say. But one thing was for sure. I learned to be more careful about what I picked up and brought home. I don't believe in the supernatural, even after all this stuff happened to me. My parents like telling me that I imagined everything because I was so young.
I hate dumb people. And plus, it makes sense because you got dumb parents, too. Like, please be aware what y'all bring home. Please.
It's still hard to fully explain it, but I've long since accepted it as one of those weird coincidences that you just can't explain.
Please don't be naive. Y'all gotta stay woke, man. I ain't gonna lie. Y'all gotta stay woke, cuz.
I hate carnivals.
Damn.
I think they're disgusting and filled with children. I hate the food, the games, and the smell of it all.
Well, goddamn.
My hatred of carnivals is probably biased, though, and mostly based on what I'm about to tell you. A few years ago, I was dragged to our local carnival by my younger sister. I obviously wasn't going to be rude and not go, but I wasn't looking forward to it. After a while, my sister got bored and wanted to leave, so I called my mom to pick us up. I actually opted not to go with them, as I was in the midst of a fight with my dad and didn't want to go back home until he was asleep. I told my mom I'd walk home later, so she picked up my sister and left. The carnival was honestly a little pathetic. There were far fewer people there that night than I remember there being in previous years, and everyone looked miserable. I figured I might as well walk around a little to try and get my money's worth. After all, I had paid for a ticket out of my own pocket. I decided to step into the funhouse. I figured that would at least be a little cool. I was expecting there to be a ton of people in there, but it was completely empty. There was literally not a single other person in there as far as I could tell.
In the funhouse?
I had never been inside a funhouse alone before. People don't realize how important the laughter and talking is.
Oh, tripping? That's where the mirror's at. That's one of my favorite ones. I ain't gonna lie. I went there one year. I went there drunk with some people. Man, I was drunk to
the atmosphere.
Cause I was so drunk.
Basically, just standing there in silence, surrounded by a bunch of weird mirrors. It was honestly a little creepy. I shrugged my shoulders and figured I might as well walk through it. Admittedly, I did get a pretty good laugh out of the distorted mirrors. I think I was like halfway through when I noticed something odd. In one of the reflections to my left, there was a head that seemed to be peering at me. I only saw it for a split second, but it was a bald guy with really sunken eyes.
Pennywise?
I whipped around, but didn't see anyone. To be completely honest, I had no idea where he had even been standing since there were mirrors all over the place.
Hell no.
He could have literally been anywhere. I thought it was especially creepy since I didn't hear the funhouse entrance open. He either snuck in behind...
Where is the fucking workers at? Don't somebody supposed to be standing on the outside of that motherfucker? If I'm not mistaken, because when I was working there, it's the person who was supposed to do it didn't have. I think he was sick or some shit, so it had to be one person, one like hosting one, and then the other one. I mean, hosting one thing and the other the fun house. Nigga, don't work supposed to be
where he had already been inside. I kept walking, going a little more quickly now, and then I saw him again, out of the corner of my eye. He had this deranged smile this time. It was the exact same face, I was positive. I tried to figure out where he was standing, but the reflections were too confusing. I yelled for him to get lost, but got no response. I wasn't sure what I was expecting. I picked up the pace again, but it was difficult trying to navigate this maze of mirrors, and I kept hitting dead ends. I started sweating, constantly looking over my shoulder every few seconds.
I would have to.
A few minutes later, I turned a corner after hitting another dead end, and a hand reached out from behind one of the mirrors, grabbing my wrist. I screamed, cursing at the guy to let go of me, but he held firm. I punched his arm, forcing him to let go. I fell to the ground in the fray, and saw the creepster in its full form. He was wearing all gray, had a bit of a gut, and a tired, sunken face. I jumped to my feet before he could reach for me again, and sprinted back the way I came. I don't know if it was survival instincts or not, but finding my way back to the entrance was somehow easier with the adrenaline coursing through my veins. I sprinted out of the funhouse and caught my breath. I reached into my back pocket, and a horrifying realization hit me. I didn't have my wallet.
Damn.
I must have dropped it when I fell. There was no way I was going back in there.
No way.
After running to the nearest staff person, I told them everything that happened. She seemed confused and told me that the funhouse was closed to patrons that night. I was horrified. They called the police and searched it.
Cause they didn't have no sign or nothing saying closed. Oh my god.
But found nothing, not even my wallet. I felt like such an idiot. I told them that that guy was probably an ex-employee with a key, but they shrugged off my theory and told me to go home. So, reluctantly, that's what I did.
Excuse me?
It's not like I had gotten hurt or anything. I wish I could tell you the story ended there, but I can't. A week later, my girlfriend called me one night in a panic, frantically screaming into the phone about something terrible that happened. Apparently, someone had been texting her phone, pretending to be me, and convinced her to drive out to this remote location to help me change a tire.
What?
Thankfully, she decided to bring her dad, even though the guy told her to come alone. They pretty quickly realized what was going on when the car parked in the lot wasn't mine. Her dad stepped out of the car, and 6 dudes stepped out of the car in front of them. He sprinted back to the car and hightailed it out of there before those guys could catch up to him. The whole thing made sense. I did have my girlfriend's number written down on a slip of paper in my wallet, which explains how he got her number.
You're supposed to know your
Both of
girlfriend.
us changed all our contact information, and it's been a month without incident. I really don't know how to feel about this whole ordeal. I think I'm just going to try to block the memory out of my head.
You can't block no shit like that, buddy. And why the fuck did you have your girlfriend number in your fucking wallet? That don't even make no sense. You supposed to know your girlfriend number by heart. This was a story about. She had a story about herself, which is crazy. I ain't gonna lie. But the first story and this story was definitely crazy. I ain't gonna lie. The second story it was kind of paranoid. Yeah, y'all need to be woke for the second story. I ain't gonna count. That being said, see you when I see y'all, man. I'm finna do another video after this one, so make sure y'all give me your thumbs up. See you when I see you, man. That's right.